Hey, good morning. It is a beautiful Monday morning right here in Indy. Let's get right to it. Race permeated the entire weekend in a great women's basketball NCAA Final Four. It was absolutely fantastic. Regardless of who you were rooting for, regardless of the color of your skin, it was absolutely fantastic. And I got to tell you, congratulations, Kim Mulkey, Angel Reese, and the rest of the LSU Tigers. They did what Kim Mulkey came there to do. What'd she come to LSU to do? Whoop up on folks. And she did. But race permeated the entire thing. Let's go backwards. Let's start from the end. Angel Reese beats Caitlin Clark. Okay. You could also say that LSU beat Iowa. I don't know if you know that, but LSU did beat Iowa, and LSU trounced Iowa. Iowa had nothing for LSU. LSU played great. LSU played with a chip on their shoulder. LSU was not going to lose. Where race came in was this. After the game, I've never seen this. Now, I've been in college basketball, around college basketball a long time. I've never seen this. I have no problem with it. I have no problem with taunting. I have no problem with going back at somebody. I have no problem with playing with a chip on your shoulder. That's how I got to Indiana, for crying out loud, being a guy that couldn't touch the rim. At a time when Indiana was the best program, played with an incredible chip, talked all kind of smack, had absolutely no interest in anybody else's feelings. So I like what Angel Reese did, but I got to tell you, I've never seen it in a national championship environment post-game. I've never seen it. Usually when you win a national championship, you're so excited, you jump up with your teammates. But hey, look, the game was in hand for a couple minutes, so Angel Reese had the opportunity to think about this and then taunt Caitlin Clark, showing the ring finger, doing the John Cena, which apparently Caitlin Clark had done before. And of course, here's where race comes in. African Americans say nobody said anything when Caitlin Clark did it. White guys are saying, hey, look, this is not sportsmanlike. I don't care either way. But race played a huge factor in this. Race played a huge factor in the game. Let's see the quote from Angel Reese after the game. Now, you got to remember, this is an all-white team, basically, I think, for Iowa against an all-black team playing for LSU. And earlier in the tournament, Dawn Staley opened the door by talking about race, how her team was perceived. Well, you know, my sense of Dawn Staley is she liked how her team was perceived until she lost, but I could be wrong because she did go at Gino Auriemma after they had won the game, but I digress. So let's see Angel Reese's statement after the game. Now, you're never going to read any of this from any of the female journalists around because they're too busy telling you, well, you've never seen anybody talk trash. Well, you must not have heard of Michael Jordan. Yes, no, I get it. You're exactly right. Everybody talks trash, but, ladies and gentlemen, but, not after the game on the court of a national championship game. Nobody talked more yang, we used to call it, than Larry Bird and Irvin Magic Johnson. But nobody talked more. Here is what she said. I don't fit in the box that y'all want me to be in. True. Oh, let's go to the video. I'm sorry. I didn't know we had the video. Let's show the video of Angel Reese.
I'm happy. I mean, all year I was critiqued about who I was. The narrative, I don't fit the narrative. I don't fit in the box that y'all want me to be in. I'm too hood, I'm too ghetto. Y'all told me that all year. But when other people do it, y'all don't say nothing. So this was for the girls that look like me, that's going to speak up on what they believe in. It's unapologetically you. And that's what I did it for tonight. This was for it was just bigger than me tonight. It was bigger than me. Twitter is going to go in a rage every time. And, I mean, I'm happy. I feel like I've helped grow women's basketball this year. I'm super happy and excited. So I'm looking forward to celebrating in the next season.
Yeah, good for her, man. And again, it's all about race. Girls that look like me. What if I said I only do this show for men that look like me? I get what she's saying, and that's great. But don't try to tell me race did not factor in when other people do it. She's talking about Caitlin Clark. She's talking about white people. There's a reporter that says when they do it, but when we do it. It's clearly divided along racial lines, and I got to tell you, that's part of sports. It's absolutely part of sports. 5 little white girls are trying to beat her, and she's not having it. She ain't having it. See, that's how folks in basketball describe, you little white guy. You white mother. I mean, hey, look, I lived it my entire life, growing up in Gary, Indiana, and whooping up on everybody. Everybody. Oh, white mother. I mean, it's a basketball thing, and it's no big deal. And then you'd laugh and whoop up on folks. But this was clearly about race yesterday. It was about 2 things, actually, race and the officials, although the officials had nothing to do. Well, they had a lot to do, but the better team won. And I like what I keep calling her Gabriella Reese, what Reese said. She's fantastic, and she's right. Look, every athlete looks for something to use as a chip on their shoulder. Everyone does. Michael Jordan famously did it, and everybody jumps up and down and stands on their head and craps snowballs. He goes, oh, look at Michael Jordan. So you know what? LSU, Angel Reese, and the rest did the same thing. But I've never seen it at the end of a national championship game. Go back and look at every national championship game you've ever seen. And I don't mind seeing it because here we are talking about women's basketball. If I am Iowa or I am Kim Mulkey or I am the NCAA, I demand these 2 teams play to start the season next year. Let's get a buildup. You know, everybody's telling me women's basketball has arrived, and certainly from tickets and TV and exposure, it has. But here's when it's really arrived, when they pay their own freight. When the basketball and the football doesn't have to pay for it. That's when you've arrived, really arrived on campus. In the media, you've arrived. There's no question. The game was anticipated, ruined a bit by the officials. She wins. She gets to get up there to the victors go to spoil. Caitlin Clark got a dose of her own medicine with this whole thing, and you know what? She handled it fine. That's the beauty of it. Caitlin Clark handled it fine. She said, yeah, I didn't really see it. I was just trying to stay on the court. But she got a dose of her own medicine. If you're going to talk trash, then you got to be able to handle talking trash when it's right back to you. But don't tell me race had nothing to do with this. This was all about race. All right, the officials had nothing to do with about race. Like, I got a lot of people saying, well, you know, 3 African-American officials. That had nothing to do. I never looked at that as a coach 100 years. Maybe you do. I don't. I looked at that strict incompetence. The Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity had to be very happy. But there's no chance in hell these 3 officials were the best 3 officials in women's college basketball. There is no chance in hell. And if they are, women's college basketball officiating absolutely stinks. Hell, there was one of these ladies that couldn't get up and down the court. She was like, it was like an AAU tournament where a dude's making $5 a game. It had nothing to do with race. That had to do with incompetence. It had to do with incompetence in the women's basketball committee. It had to do with something other than putting the best on the court for the biggest game maybe ever in college women's basketball. Period. Period. You say whatever you'd like. The technical foul on Caitlin Clark was idiotic. The officials lied about it. Good for Rebecca Lobo. Good for Ryan Rucco for calling him out. Twitter did rage, but it didn't really rage about Reese until after the game. It was raging the entire game about the officials. It was horrific. And again, when you just acquiesce and you worry more about the DEI office than you do about the job at hand, you get Pete Buttigieg and you get these officials from last night. It's just what is real. You want to see it? Watch ESPN. That's all there is there. That's it. The DEI office is happy. Some guy with a thing is happy. But you hurt women that deserve better. You hurt women that had played their brains out all year long, got to the biggest game of the year, the most watched game of the year, and you brought incompetence into it. Now, LSU, better team. Oh, better team. But I got to tell you, the officials embarrassed themselves. All right, Dawn Staley opened this whole race thing. Now, Dawn Staley, I like her. She's fine. I don't really pay that much attention to her. She's got commercials with Kay. They're not good enough. Those 2 are legendary coaches. They should have better commercials. You know what I'm saying? They should have much better commercials. The commercials that they're playing are crap. All right, let's see Dawn Staley's video for the other day where, of course, she loses. I would like to see one quote. She's going to say you called us monkeys. I would love for anybody to send me that where somebody actually said that, or was this just made up to race bait? Let's hear.
Times other coaches, your colleagues, have sitting in that spot and talked about you all being bullies. What's the truth about your team?
The truth about our team, okay? It's a good question, okay? We're not bar fighters. We're not thugs. We're not monkeys. We're not street fighters. This team exemplifies how you need to approach basketball on the court and off the court.
I don't doubt that for a second. I don't. I mean, I'm a big fan of Aaliyah Boston. I'm a big fan of the way they handled themselves. I mean, in defeat, the players. Aaliyah Boston covering up her teammate is one of the iconic moments from this tournament. But show me anywhere where anybody called her team monkeys. I mean, I would be very curious about that. I think Jason Whitlock said the same thing, like, hey, look, if they did, then that person needs to be fired immediately and never work in the sports or any industry again other than fast food. Go work in fast food. I want to see that. If that is true, then my God, and I assume it is true because Dawn Staley said it was at a national press conference. Bar fighters, I've seen where people say they're overly physical. I've seen where people say they're a tough crowd. All right. I'm sure you use that. Let's go out tough them. Let's go do this. But I would love to see anyone, anytime, anywhere, show me an example where somebody called her team monkeys. That is egregious. That is fireable. That is bannable. That should never be allowed in any sport, in any context, calling a team that. I don't even care what team. I don't even care if it's Iowa's women's basketball. You don't call people that. So I would love, if anybody has it out there, I would love to see that reference, and then I'll go nuts on the person that did it because, frankly, that has no part at all whatsoever in this. None. Zip. Zero. Zilch. Now, if you made it up, that's not a great thing, and I assume that she did not. But to the victor go the spoils, right? To the victor go the spoils. Congratulations, LSU women's basketball. You were very tough. You were very good. You stood up and you made shot after shot after shot, got in the stance, defended. The difference in the game was the fact that Caitlin Clark could not get to the rim. And if you really want to know the difference in the game, Kim Mulkey showed herself to be a 20 times better coach than Dawn Staley because Dawn Staley's players are still hugged onto their man outside the three-point line while Caitlin Clark goes and beats her man and lays it in. I mean, listen, Kim Mulkey wasn't having it. Kim Mulkey's team did exactly what I tell you good teams do. They took away the lane and got to shooters. Gave up 75 points or whatever it was, scored 92. What a celebration of women's basketball. And I ain't even mad at Kim Mulkey's outfit. Of course it says, look at me, look at me, look at me. But you know what? So what? So did Bob Knight's checkered jacket. So did Mike Krzyzewski's corporate rat-faced look. That's not fair. Anyway, I digress. Good for everybody involved because here we are on a Monday. We're talking passionately about it. Women's basketball, you have arrived on the national scene. You will really arrive when you can pay your own freight. Now, it's hard to do. Basketball, men's doesn't really do it. But in terms of women's basketball, I'd like to see them get their own TV contract, get their own thing, and really bust it out because it's fun to watch. Tonight, we should have the most lopsided NCAA tournament that we've ever had. We should. Over 22 points a game, that's what UConn has won by. Now, you got to give San Diego State credit. It sounds like I did it right there. I did not give San Diego State credit. I didn't. But I actually do. You get to the national championship game, you win on a buzzer beater, I got to tell you, it's pretty good. No, it's really good. And the fact of the matter is San Diego State is a tough-minded, strong-willed team as evidenced by getting 2 defensive stops and hitting a game winner against Florida Atlantic, who was the better team. They simply were the better team. Now, going into this game, what's got to happen? Well, UConn has two of everything. They've got two bigs. This Sanogo kid is terrific. He's averaging 20 and 12 or 20 and 10 in the NCAA tournament. He's the one true post guy in this game. I was shocked to find out that the Lede kid, who played great for San Diego State, is the same kid whose mother I met and him when he played at Ohio State a few years ago. What a great family. What a nice mother. I didn't know that the kid had transferred to San Diego State. I didn't know that he was their main go-to guy in the middle of the lane. I got to tell you, he's a great dude. Great mother. Had a wonderful talk with her in the lobby when he was a freshman, kind of finding his footing at Ohio State when my son was on the staff there. So I root like crazy for good people, and he's a really good dude. And I'm glad to see that the transfer rule, I think this is his third school, but I don't care. A fit is a fit. Worked out well for him. Key tonight, San Diego State, Matt Bradley. Matt Bradley got the party started by banging in 3 threes in the first 6-7 minutes against Florida Atlantic. Now, that is not something that they do, they being San Diego State, well. They shot 9 of 18. They can shoot it, but they don't score it well. They're going to have to score it tonight. They're going to have to get into the mid to high 70s, if not into the low 80s. Because I'll tell you this, Connecticut is. Connecticut's dynamite. Connecticut's going to get down the floor. They're going to throw it to the big. They're going to reverse it. They're going to shoot it with ease. The over I just saw was like 133.5. I would take the over in this. I got a feeling that Connecticut's going to make some shots. I got a feeling that San Diego State's not going to be able to slow the tempo. San Diego State will get to 60. Connecticut, or at least 60. Connecticut will get mid-70s. But that guy right there, Brian Dutcher, is a terrific basketball coach. Before the Sweet 16, we gave you the 5 best coaches left in the Sweet 16. Brian Dutcher was among our 5. Why? Because he not only helped establish the culture back in 1999 when Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher took over San Diego State, but he has enhanced the culture. 30-2 2 years ago. 2020, they would have been a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. This is not, this is not just oh my gosh, what has happened with this? Oh my gosh, where did these guys come from? No. These guys are, well, used to greatness. So's UConn. Now, let me go to Danny Hurley on the other side. Danny Hurley, I don't know him well. I've talked to him. He's been on shows that I've done. But I have a great admiration for Danny Hurley. Why? Because Danny Hurley lived in the shadow of not only his father, but his brother, Bobby Effin Hurley. Everybody in college basketball knows the name Bobby Effin Hurley. And he's called Bobby Effin Hurley because he effed every team that they played against. He, Leitner, Grant Hill, Brian Davis, Thomas Hill, you name it, Christian Leitner, you name it. They got it done. And Danny Hurley always was kind of in the shadows. Danny Hurley was always the guy that was the younger brother. Started out as a high school coach, got a job. Next thing you know, Rhode Island turns Rhode Island into UConn and does what you're supposed to do at UConn. Establishes a culture of toughness, no BS, and winning. Period. Tough on guys. See, this is what I've yelled and screamed about my alma mater, Indiana. My alma mater, Indiana, has tried to change itself over the years. Change it this, change it that, go this way, go that way. No. Toughness permeates Indiana. UConn figured it out. They got Danny Hurley, and you know what? UConn stores Connecticut's going to go win a national championship. I think they win the game big time. In fact, I would argue that if San Diego State wins this national championship, it's the biggest upset since 1985 when Villanova took down Georgetown in what many consider to be the biggest upset in NCAA tournament championship game history. That was my senior year in college. Year before, we were in the Elite Eight. And I watched that game thinking, man, we could have done that. That's what everybody thinks. Man, we could have done that. But the fact of the matter is this game should be a blowout. It just should be. Period. We'll get Will Cain's perspective. I think Will Cain is still reeling. I think Will Cain thought that this night was going to belong to the Texas Longhorns. I had no such illusions with my Indiana Hoosiers. I picked them because I'm a homer. But you know what? Will Cain had legit reason. Will joins us now. Hey, look, Texas didn't make it. I think we got a rout tonight. What say you?
This analogy on the Will Cain podcast. Let's say you go to Vegas, right? And you decide you're pretty committed to betting on red at the roulette table. And you've bet on red 4 or 5 times in a row and it keeps coming up black. At some point, you're going to start to doubt your bet. Even if you know the odds, Dan, are the same with every new spin of the wheel. At some point, you're going to be like, maybe I ought to move my bet over to black. My point is, everyone has bet against San Diego State for every round of the tournament. There's not a single game, maybe against FAU, where you said, you know what? San Diego State is the safe bet. San Diego State is the favorite. Let's bet on San Diego State. So I feel a little weird one more time discounting San Diego State. But I think that UConn's been dominant through the entire tournament. There's no reason to doubt them, other than you could probably make the argument they haven't had the toughest road to the finals. But for whatever road's been handed to them, they've absolutely dominated. So I do think it'll be a blowout. I would have liked, to your point, I would have liked to seen the Longhorn defense go up against UConn. I would have liked to have seen, I think there's a shot. I do think it's revealing that Miami has limitations when it doesn't go to the foul line 30 times. But I'm not sore. I mean, I'm a little sore, but I'm not completely sore as a loser. And I will say that UConn is the overwhelming favorite on Monday night.
You know, one of the things that I love about sports is people whose teams get beat, and I do it too, throw in the little caveat. And you caveated me right there. Well, when they don't go to the free throw line 30 times in a game. You caveated me right there, big boy.
Yeah, I mean, I threw something in there. I mean, some would call it chum. I mean, and you, like a good shark, took the bait. I think that Miami was the beneficiary of some very fortuitous officiating in the Texas-Miami game. I don't want to always be the guy that points to the zebras, but I also am not going to pretend like they're not a third party on the court. And I do think they had a really large outsized role in Texas versus Miami. But nobody's really here to relitigate the Elite Eight. Can I bring up something with you, Dan? And it will actually pertain to Texas. And I think as a conversation will lead us back into the conversation of the morning that you've been having, which is Iowa against LSU in the women's tournament. Dan, I saw this interview yesterday with Rodney Terry, the new head coach of the Texas Longhorns. And I don't know the name of the show, but it's 4 guys. They're sitting in a really informal environment, maybe at a bar, and they're talking. And Rodney Terry hasn't given a ton of interviews. And he says the following. And what he says, by the way, Dan, is transcripted in a tweet. So if you just read it and don't take the time to watch the video, here's what you would presume that was said by Rodney Terry. He said, Chris Beard didn't do this himself. I did this. A lot of us did this. I recruited 3 of these starters to Texas. Okay, you read that and you think, wow, Rodney Terry is really feeling himself. He's got this new job at the University of Texas. He seems to be denying credit to the former coach, Chris Beard, now the head coach of Ole Miss. He seems to be a little bit denying credit to Beard for the success and for the roster for the Longhorns. But if you watch the video, one single word is not transcripted, Dan, and that word is by. If you listen to the video, Rodney Terry says, Chris Beard didn't do this by himself. We were a team effort, many coaches involved. I was intimately involved. Hell, 3 of these starters I directly recruited. Now what you hear Rodney Terry saying is something that shares the credit, meaning it's not just Beard by himself who did this. We as a staff put this squad together. And I think that one little word changes the entire tone and intent of what Terry is saying and what you as the listener hear. And that's, to me, an example of how subtle human communication is and how little small differences can lead to completely different conclusions.
Well, it's dangerous, right? I mean, it's dangerous because then people react to that. Now, in the case of a college basketball coach, it's not dangerous, but you know what I'm saying. On a broader level, on a world stage, particularly where the world is right now, where the United States is right now, the way that goes is very dangerous. I'll give you an example. I'm reading about how the transgender world is under attack. So I read the Bible, which is, right, the New York Times. And I read an article that outlines all of the legislation that is going on currently in the transgender community. And I'm reading it, and I can tell by how it is printed, it wants to slant it as awful. But if you actually read it for yourself and read it, well, don't talk about sex 6th grade and under. Don't talk about gender identity in schools. That's not an attack. But to your point, the slant becomes the article, not the actual fact becomes the article. You see what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, and I think what you're actually describing is a whole different level. What you're now describing is propaganda. That's the purposeful use by the communicator in manipulating your and my mind by changing words and intent and point of a story. What I'm actually telling you about this morning is I think even without that, even without bias, certainly without propaganda, human communication is hard, Dan. It's really hard. The extent to which it's nonverbal, the extent to which it's tone, the extent to which there is word choice. And so this is where I'm leading with it. When you look at Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark, there are reactions all over the board. And I actually don't know. I know you've been talking about it this morning. I don't know exactly where you landed, Dan. But first of all, I think we're making entirely too much out of it. I think it's being blown out of proportion. That being said, I think that there are subtleties that have nothing to do with race, in my estimation here, that show just a breakdown in understanding small differences in human communication. I think, first of all, again, we're blowing it out of proportion. But I don't think what Caitlin Clark did against Louisville is the same as what Angel Reese did against LSU. And in order to turn into a proxy racial war, you have to pretend like those two things are exactly the same. When, we can see Angel Reese chased Caitlin Clark around the court. Caitlin Clark against Louisville did it in passing. And I'm not even sure it's entirely clear she did it directly to another player. There's a video out there, I don't know if you've seen it yet, Dan, where one of Caitlin Clark's teammates are asking her about all the different things she does after she shoots. I think she does a shrug, she does this. And the player goes, "Oh, you do this to their face? You do it like this?" She goes, No. I don't do it to another player. I do it to the bench. But look, Clark is arrogant. Clark is cocky. Clark is a competitor, and so is Reese. I'm just telling you, I think that there are subtle differences, and from that, we need to pay attention to what they are so that we can understand each other. And by the way, judge. I'm not saying, oh, it's all kumbaya. No. I think Reese's behavior at the end of the game was wrong, but I don't think it's DEFCON. What's the highest one? I think 1 is the highest one. It's not DEFCON 1. And the way that we correct these things is by saying, look, if I were somebody that cared about Angel Reese, I'd be like, come on, Angel, you chased her around the court. You did it directly to her in her face. You are provoking her. You are taunting her. Be above that.
Well, I don't, where I land on it, and you really stated it well, I do think it is blown out of proportion. I'm a big proponent of talking trash. I'm a big proponent. I did it. I wasn't even any good, and that's all I do to this day if I play against my kids in anything. But I'll say this. I've been around college basketball a long time, fall of 1981. I've never seen it in a national championship game. Usually you win you win a national championship, and you know what happens? The team gets all crazy and excited, like my dog is right now, and next thing you know, you go boom, right? You're like, all right, here's the deal. We're all excited. Well, the truth of the matter is there was race involved in this. There was absolutely race involved in this. And it was more when Angel Reese said after, look, I don't fit the narrative. This is for girls like me. Hey, look, when you're a white dude, I grew up in Gary, Indiana, and when you're a white dude playing basketball and you're beating African Americans, you get called all kind of little white things. That's just part of it. And you either get a chip on your shoulder or you get scared, one of the two. Angel Reese had enough, in my opinion, of hearing about Caitlin Clark. She'd had enough of hearing about, this team from Iowa. I think, but when she said, look, it is for girls that look like me, I think it's 100% about race. Not necessarily the in-your-face thing. That's part of after game, but I think the whole game was.
So I like that you distinguish not the particular act that has drawn everyone's attention, but the underlying tension through all the relationships on the court. in the game. And you may be right. I don't think there's anything. First of all, the entire American society is infused with an underlying tension of race that every individual has to try to rise above. But I guess you are better. You are more well versed to speak directly to the potential motivations of Angel Reese or the LSU basketball team or Caitlin Clark or anybody else involved in that interaction. What I see, though, is a commentariat around the system or an ecosystem of commentators who have such either a one-track mind or a vested interest in continuing to inflame racial divisions. And they're not important enough to mention their names, but I saw two writers saying, if you look at these two situations and you think they're not exactly the same, then you're an example of white supremacy. And then another, these are both sports writer blue check mark types. And then another said, if you think the white player gets to set the standard of behavior that the black player has to live up to, that's the exact type of system of white supremacy that needs to be destroyed. And to me, if, again, you can disregard all the subtleties, and I give you the Rodney Terry example where the racial roles are exactly reversed, but if you can ignore all the distinguishing factors and subtleties, and all you can boil it down to in this situation is black and white, then you are the one that sees the world exclusively through a racial prism. Then you are the one that fits the traditional definition of a racist. If all you see is Angel Reese is black and Caitlin Clark is white, and if Angel was your daughter, would you go, hey, don't chase, be honest and be real. Don't chase her around, game over. Don't taunt her and try to be absolutely in her face. If you can honestly say you wouldn't give that advice to Angel Reese, I would be shocked, and I would suggest you're trying to inflame this as an exclusive story about race.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are on both sides, Will. I really do. I think there are a lot, and I think in some instances it is race-based. I saw, and again, you said it perfectly, I saw one, quote, journalist who isn't important enough to name say exactly this. He said, well, when they do it, it's okay. When we do it, it's not. And I'm like, look, how about when players do it and talk about when players do it and how they do it? Again, I have no problem with taunting. I don't. I have no problem. But I just have never seen it at the end of a national championship game. I know my dog was barking like a crazy person, but I've never, when I was talking about it, but I've never seen, all I've ever seen after national championships is running, jumping on your teammates, going nuts, not chasing somebody around the floor to give a John Cena thing. I've never seen
it. Again, is that you've just won the national championship, and that's the number one thing that occurs to you. Again, I in ways I want to be forgiving. I want to be magnanimous, and hey, I really enjoyed seeing that side of you. And I'm not being facetious. I'm not messing with you on this. Like whenever you come on Fox and Friends or you come on Tucker with me, you do try to be fair in a way that I think is really admirable. And I here's me trying to live up to that same standard. I do. I think human communication is really hard. I do think you can be somewhat forgiven to go, black girl gets condemned, white girl gets forgiven. But you have to try hard to see the subtleties in communication, because effort and trying hard is that's the core of individualism. Like you have to understand. To walk into every scenario and give everyone the benefit of the doubt until you can judge them based upon their own merit and their own personality and their own characteristics, that's hard. The point of racism is that it's easy. It's a Cliff Notes. It's a short book. It's the quick shortcut around the difficult work of understanding someone as an individual. And all I'm saying is human communication is hard, and if we want to rise above it, maybe we should put in the effort. Kim Mulkey, really good, right? When you take over different programs and on this type of timeline, I mean, that's how we know if you're an all-time great coach.
The difference, Will, between the game plans of Kim Mulkey and Dawn Staley defensively on Caitlin Clark were stark. Caitlin Clark was not able to get to the basket yesterday at all without people converging on her. If you watched the South Carolina game, the strategy was to stay with shooters almost with your back to Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark was able to get to the rim 5 times when things didn't go well with the jump shot. Caitlin Clark whooped her defender and got to the rim. Look, people get mad, at Kim Mulkey because she wears the outfit, right? And it's look at me, people. Hey, when you win like Kim Mulkey does and you put together a team, I don't give a damn what you wear, Will. To the victor go the spoils, man. And people may say things about her, but you know who says things to her and seems to love her? The people that matter most, her players, and that's what coaching has become.
Yes, and to me, what distinguishes Mulkey is I've seen her through several different experiences, several different experiments, several different scenarios come out with the same outcome. Well, no, it's Baylor or LSU. You know, like that would be the one great argument against Belichick, right? We have seen Saban, we've seen Urban Meyer move, and I don't care. Say what you want to say about Urban Meyer. There's a lot to say, and I've had a lot of negative to say about Urban Meyer. But you can't say that he hasn't changed locations and continue to win. You can look at Saban and go, let me get this, LSU, Alabama. Okay, maybe not in the pros, but a coach to me, you know, Coach K, and a lot of basketball coaches are like this, Dan, where they stay at one place for the entirety of their career. And that deserves its own level of praise because now you're a true builder over a long period of time. But the guys that hit reset and go on to the new challenge and do it again, I do think they have a feather in their cap over the guys that stay in one place and maintain it over decades.
Well, I got to tell you, Jim Larinaga the only place Jim didn't win was at Bowling Green. Bowling Green's hard. Bowling Green, me and Larinaga, we gave it our best, but Larinaga then goes to George Mason, a job that really he wanted because he was kind of from there. Nobody else wanted. He goes to Final Four. Then he goes to Miami. Guess what? Goes to the Final Four. That's not like going to Kentucky or Indiana or Duke and going to the Final Four. That, to your point, is about a good example as I can give you. Nobody, and I mean nobody, legitimately cared about Miami basketball until Larinaga, and even when Larinaga's been there. So to your point, I agree. And where Mulkey goes, winning follows. Urban's a good friend of mine, and where he goes, winning follows. I would argue that Urban actually, in the Big Ten, changed the entire scope of the Big Ten in terms of how you had to recruit. No more thick ankles. You got to get some guys that can run a little bit, some speed. The thick ankle days are gone if you want to compete nationally.
I've never heard that phrase. I love it. I'm going to add it to the diary. So no more thick ankles, bad eyes. You've got another one that you've given me. You're like a politically incorrect dude walking into a bar, but just for you, it's for locker rooms. It's just high school locker rooms. You walk in and you can body shame someone in a matter of seconds. Hey, this guy's a 4-star. Don't like him. Thick ankles. Porzingis, great. Don't like him. Bad eyes. What else do you have? What's in the diary of Dan Dakich? Bad body. I don't want him. Ankles, eyes, and what else?
When a 7-footer is really 6'7", but he has a long neck. Beware of long neck 7-footers because they're not really 7-footers.
This is great. I want to know this. I want more. Give me more. Long arms are good.
I got
Everybody in sports likes long arms, right? We overvalue height. We undervalue arms. How about that as a statement?
I'll give you one. Urban Meyer and I were watching the Indiana Michigan football game. All right. And Indiana's linemen we were literally on the field right in the end zone. Indiana was at the 10-yard line in front of us. I go, is Indiana guys look to you more like MAC players? They go, yeah. Indiana's lineman got the dropped ass. I go, what's the dropped ass? He goes, look at their ass is down here. You got to have a high ass. You got to have a high ass and you got to have high calves. You want a good player? Look at their calves. High calves, high ass. Your ass, if a good athlete's ass should be to their neck.
I had a guy in high school. We went to high school. We used to say he could pull his wallet out over his shoulder because his ass was so high.
Yes.
So wait, but the calves thing is interesting. So I've seen I have wondered about calves because there's seemingly no consistency. In my, of course, amateur estimation, I'm not a practiced locker room body type observer like Dan Dakich. I haven't noticed a calf consistency. to athleticism, vertical and that kind of thing. Big calves, small calves, skinny calves, by the way, calves are genetic. You can do marginal work in the weight room on your calf. My wife has amazing calves. Okay. She doesn't do anything about it. And people have said before, what do you do? The truth is there's nothing. You're born that way. And I'm just praying one of my sons ends up with those calves and not my skinny calves. But what you're saying is it's not so much size of the calf, it's location on the lower leg. So you're saying those dudes that have like a small little ball of a calf up high near the knee, but then pencil bone legs underneath, that's a good thing?
Yeah, look at a thoroughbred. I mean, look, if your name is Dakich, you don't have calves and you don't have a chest. So I have always
now chest
been
can be
fun
worked
of
on
for my lack.
Chest can be worked on.
Yeah. Okay, and no work ethic. Okay, no work ethic for lifting weights. Let's go that route. But yes, these are all things that quite frankly, you look at. Now they're not total. I don't know. They're not total decision makers for you. But if you're going to say, all right, I have a friend who couldn't play a sport dead, like could not play a sport growing up. I don't care. But I tell you what he could do. He could jump like, holy cow. And he had calves that were almost to his freaking thigh. And I'm like, well, you got great calves. You can jump. You got great. Couldn't catch, run, nothing. Smart as hell. He had great calves.
I'm serious. I want a checklist. I think you could publish it in the New York Times. High ass, high calves, no long necks. I want to save the eyes. What was the new one you gave me today? The new one.
Thick ankles.
Oh, thick ankles. Yeah, that makes sense, by the way. Heavy-footed. Bad eyes. Now, one last thing before we move on to this. This isn't about just male bodies. This is athletic bodies, I assume. Are bad eyes physical, or are they in your ability, like your sort of metaphysical ability to see? Are you talking about like eyes that are too close together at the front of the head, or too far apart to the side of the head, like shark eyes, like fish eyes? Or are you talking about literally, I can tell that guy can't see the field?
No, nothing physical. Don't try this at home, Will. This is only for experienced eye watchers. This is only for those of us that grew up going, man, I'm going to beat him because he looks scared, or he doesn't look confident, or he looks too confident.
Right.
I mean, coaches, media got all over me for my eye thing, and I had so many coaches go, oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, I had scouts in the NFL go, oh, my God. You're 100% right. You can tell by looking. Like, when people argue on TV, well, like, how did so-and-so, why didn't that coach get so-and-so the shot out of a timeout? Many times it's because the coach looked and didn't like what so-and-so's eyes told them about making or missing a shot, and liked what somebody else told them about making or missing a shot. It's not like, well, you got little beady eyes or they're close. No. Strictly mental, not physical. Strictly.
Okay. I mean, that seems, I'm not trying to take credit away from you. That seems obvious. I mean, that seems like, important. The eyes are the window to the soul. You're judging a person's confidence. And it's funny you bring up, when people argue on TV. The truth is, I can use that when I argue on TV. When I used to go on First Take, I mean, I can honestly see in someone's eyes when I'm debating them, or maybe even before it starts, whether or not this is going to be a formidable debate, right? I can see if they are nervous or scared or in their own head and not present in the moment, not listening to what I have to say, have no counterpunch, have no rebuttal. I can see it all in their eyes.
But the key is what I did with Porzingis. And all I said about Porzingis was the number 2 pick in the draft, a supposed unicorn, can change an NBA team. He ain't the guy. Whoever drafts him, turned out to be the Knicks, will stay in the lottery. He will not elevate him. The key is doing it before. And I'll tell you what his eyes told me. His eyes told me he was about himself. His eyes told me he had been pampered. And his eyes told me when it got really tough, he wasn't going to show. And when you look at it, how many times has that guy been injured? I don't even know where he is anymore. The eyes beforehand, Will, that's the key, big boy.
Well, and that's where you're getting into like phrenology. Okay. Do you know what? You remember that? Like in the early 20th century when they would like measure someone's head and feel the bumps in their head. And from that, they could kind of discern their personality. I'm a little more skeptical of your ability to look at a human being's eyes in a permanent status and make a judgment on their character. I am more confident in your ability to see how they feel in the moment. I'm not so sure Dan Dakich, phrenology expert, can look at my eyes right now and tell me everything they need to know about what I'm all about. I'm not sure that you're that good, Dakich.
But you're not saying no. You're saying I'm not sure. So there is reasonable doubt in the back of your head. Let me tell you something. Two things. One, speaking of the head, if you look up waterhead babies, my head is so big, my mother, true story, took me back to the hospital to see if I was a waterhead baby. True. And if
what
you
is
look
that?
up
I've always heard
babies,
that. I don't know what that is. I've heard that. It's in like, historical popular culture reference, but I don't know what waterhead is.
It's just your head is so massive and so distorted that I guess it filled with water. They called it waterhead baby. My guys will put it up on the screen at some point. You can look it up. My mother legitimately took me back. So the head. And second thing, I remember the day I was born. So there are a lot of things going on in here, pal, that, you know what?
You do not. You do not remember the day you were born. Man, just when I think we're getting somewhere and I think you've got a lot of credibility and I need to listen to some more of what you have to say, then you go and run out that you remember the day you were born. And then it's like talking to Einstein and all of a sudden Einstein says to you, and another thing, and then I can't even think of a corollary. He goes, and another thing, Will, I've been to Mars. And you're like, Albert, I was just putting a lot of credibility in what you had to say. You don't remember the day you were born.
A lot of people have said that to me, but I've stuck by this story for about 50 years now. Even back when
that's
I was
not a lie
10,
if you believe it.
Well, yeah, Costanza does rule. Of course, all things head back. That's a good-looking head of hair right there. I do. I'm just telling you. All right, last thing, Will, before I let you go. Word on the street is Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, but there's a third guy involved. My friend Roger Wallace, the radio analyst for Longhorn football, my college roommate, told me there's a third guy involved in the quarterback hunt who is a Vince Young prototype. This isn't just a Arch Manning, Quinn Ewers head-to-head battle. There's other folks involved here, big boy.
Malik Murphy from California. He came last year. He's really good. He's huge. That's the Vince Young. I don't know what the Vince Young comparison comes from, except that he's black and he's really, really tall. I don't think that he necessarily has the legs.
I will tell you, okay, here's what Roger said. He said that it is not, okay, you want to give that, that's fine. He goes, but he has a Vince Young presence about him. He has a presence that they have not seen. He commands,
yes, I've read all the same things. His personality is magnetic. Yeah. All the dudes gravitate towards him. That's absolutely true. And he's way better than people think because all the attention is on Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. I hope he sticks around because, there's like, this is sports, Dakich, right? Like, let reality unfold because there is sort of this like almost regal, what do you call it when you pass it down from king to king? There's like this inherited throne idea going on in Texas that Quinn Ewers, the fly in the ointment is how long does Quinn Ewers stay? And then it passes on to Arch Manning. But in the recruiting class between them, technically in the same recruiting class as Quinn Ewers, but Ewers went early, is Malik Murphy. And he's really good. And in the modern day NCAA football, I don't know how long we get to keep him if he thinks, wow, do I get a fair shake here, or does Arch Manning just get the job after Quinn Ewers and he ends up being a great quarterback for somebody else? I don't know. But if there were no Arch Manning, I'd feel pretty good that he is the next guy in line. How about that? One last note, and I got to go because Stuart Varney wants me to hop on and probably talk about Waterhead. I'm not sure what the topic will be on Fox Business, but it could be, and now I'm fully prepared. I think I told you this. My nephew is a big time. He committed to Clemson. He's now a mid-year. He just started. So he started in January, his freshman year. And now that I have somebody behind the scenes, it's a different perspective of all the reporting that I read about the way things are going. So you're hearing this about Malik Murphy, right? And now that my nephew is in a program where there's so much reporting on it, I can see the limited nature of the information that we get about what's happening in spring practice. I mean, I'm not saying you don't get any, you get some. You get windows that are like looking through a peephole at a full picture.
Oh, man, I've always said, like, when you read something about a college football or basketball program, there's always a backstory. There's always way more to it. I've kept you too long, but we did touch a bunch of subjects that are fun and interesting. And yes, I do remember my date of birth. Okay. August 17th, 1962. I remember it.
Well, I can name my birth date as well. I know my birth date. That doesn't mean I remember the day. I would love to hear your visuals of that day.
For another time, my friend, for another time.
Always fun, Dakich.
See you, Will. That's the great Will Cain, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't use the word great lightly. That was fun. We kept him way too long, but when we're having fun, we do what we do. We're going to also, don't forget, we're going to have Clay Travis join us at the top of the hour to continue the conversation that we're having. I believe, look, regardless of whether you believe, you don't believe, I believe race played a big part in the entire women's Final Four weekend. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't have. It's just natural behavior. See, we want to change natural behavior. And in basketball, I'm just telling you, growing up where I grew up, look, Gary, Indiana, white guy, best player in the city. Are you kidding me? Are you nuts? You go to an AAU tournament, you hear all kind of racial stuff directed at a white player. You do. I mean, I'm not saying you should feel sorry. I actually took it as a badge of honor. People ask me all the time, biggest honor you ever got? Biggest honor I ever got as a basketball player was as a senior in high school. Biggest game of the year, 8,000 people, TVs everywhere. Regional afternoon in Indiana, Gary Westside High School. I dropped 33 in an overtime win against all-black Gary Roosevelt. I fouled out with like 30 seconds to go. The entire Gary Roosevelt bench, players came over to give me a hug, handshake, sign of respect. After, everybody in the gym was calling me, all right, that's part of basketball. And if you don't understand it, I can't help you. But that's a big part of basketball. You can't be sensitive to it, but you can wear it as a chip. And that's what Angel Reese did. She wore it as a chip. Did she go too far? Sure. End of the game, she did what she did. But she wore the race thing as a chip. You little white girls ain't beating us. I'm just telling you, that's a part of it. Now, it's heinous, as Will just said. You could take this part and make it into a clip and call me a bad guy, but I'm just telling you how basketball works. At least in my world of basketball. At least in my world growing up and coaching and understanding crowds and understanding assistant coaches. Hell, we had an assistant coach at Indiana, Joby Wright, great player, wouldn't give any respect to a white player. Any. I remember when a kid named Courtney Whitty had a big game. Courtney was a white kid, big old farm kid from Vincennes, Indiana. Came as a junior college player, barely played. Joby's response was, well, Whopper's on scholarship too. It wasn't like, great job, Whopper. It was like, well, he's on scholarship too. Joby hadn't recruited him. Joby had recruited a kid named Andre Harris. Andre got set. Whitty came in. Joby didn't really like it. So, well, Whopper's on. Every guy that played at Indiana during those times, remember that statement. Well, Whopper's on scholarship too. It wasn't like, hey, Whopper did really well. It wasn't like, hey, great job coming in and helping us win. No, you're on Sky. It's the way basketball is. I mean, we could not talk about it. We could not say it. We could be scared of it, like every woman journalist is. We could say, well, you all have never seen trash talking. Okay. But that's what that was. That's what the post game was. Here, before we go to break, let's play Angel Reese's post game again. You don't think this is about race? Then you're out of your freaking mind. Of course it is. Of course this is I just kicked the all-white team of Iowa's backside, and I ain't mad about it. It's part of basketball. Let's hear.
I'm happy. I mean, all year I was critiqued about who I was. Nobody, I don't, yeah, the narrative, I don't fit the narrative. I don't fit in the box that y'all want me to be in. I'm too hood, I'm too ghetto. Y'all told me that all year. But when other people do it, y'all don't say nothing. So this was for the girls that look like me, that's gonna speak up on what they believe in. It's unapologetically you. And that's what I did it for tonight. This was for it was just bigger than me tonight. It was bigger than me. Twitter is gonna go in a rage every time. And I mean, I'm happy. I feel like I've helped grow women's basketball this year. I'm super happy and excited. So I'm looking forward to celebrating in the next season.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And if I'm the NCAA, I am making Angel Reese against Caitlin Clark opening game next year and just have the biggest ratings of the year. That's what I'm doing. And I would imagine both want a piece of each other. I would imagine, now I don't know how good Iowa's going to be. The center who was really good, she's gone. Caitlin Clark's back. I assume they have a pretty good recruiting class and you got a chance to get in the portal. You know, also a lot of people complaining about LSU, quote, buying players or putting up trades. So what? That's the game. What are you supposed to do? Not do it? One thing, I got a beautiful text today. I got a beautiful, beautiful text today from a man who coached at LSU, coached the New Orleans Saints. I loved it down there. They make no presence except demanding excellence. They sit in the most economically depressed area of the country, but keep on rolling. That's right. Winning, you want to talk about it just means more? LSU, it just means more. He also said, can't remember seeing a kid controlling and finishing possessions in a big moment, fourth quarter, like Alexa Morris did. LSU attracts and pays for greatness. That's absolutely right. And you know what? In the modern world of college athletics, ain't a damn thing wrong with that. Now, tonight, Danny Hurley, he maintains his players. He lost one, Kid Gaffney, that went to Florida Atlantic. But, hey, look, didn't bother him. He's in the national championship game and a heavy favorite to do it. 7.5 doesn't seem like a lot. So there's different ways to do it, but one of the main ways to do it, ladies and gentlemen, quite frankly, is to demand excellence. Go get players that fit you. The transfer portal's there for a reason. NIL money is being spent for a reason. It isn't to compete, it's to win, period. Good for Kim Mulkey, good for Angel Reese. All right, Clay Travis joins us coming up in a few minutes, going to tell us, well, a number of things, whatever the hell Clay wants to talk about.
How hard is it to repeat? I have no idea. Never did it. I would argue that it's probably, I would say without a doubt, probably the hardest sport to repeat in. Even though, I mean, you look at the Braves in the 90s, who won, what did they win? 15, 16 straight division titles, one World Series. The Indians in the late 90s should have had multiples. To me, that's what makes the Yankee thing so amazing. That 97, 98, 99 run, or 98, 99, 2000 run is incomprehensible to me as a player. I played in 4 World Series, blessed to play in 4 of them. 1993, then 8 years later, then 3 years later, then 3 years later. No team that I was ever on come late May had a, in my opinion, we did. Arizona, we got hurt late. Gonzo went down late in the year, and RJ and I were hurt on and off during the season. Or no, 02. We had a good series, but Gonzo got hurt late in the year in the postseason. In 04, we got to the playoffs, or 05, we got to the playoffs, and the White Sox won it that year. We had to play through the end of the season to get in. I remember pitching that last day against the Indians, or against the Yankees, with the Indians needing a win or a loss. But we ended up getting swept by the White Sox in the series. I never got the pitch in, but I can't imagine it. It takes an enormous amount of talent, but probably twice as much luck to avoid injuries and stupid stuff. In the middle of a pennant race and your best player gets brought up on charges of sexual assault, stuff like that. Which in today's day and age, now it's gone to, in the middle of a pennant run and your shortstop says something on Twitter and is immediately throttled by the cancel culture. And unfortunately, those are the things. Those are going to happen. Those are going to happen. And surprisingly, still players are getting caught doing PEDs, which blows me away that people are that stupid. But yeah, if you can avoid that stuff for year after year after year, and these are 9-month seasons, guys. This goes from February to late October if you're a winner. That's amazing to avoid that in a year, much less 2, 3, 4 years. So yeah, really, really hard.
You know, one of the things about OutKick, as Clay started this entire thing, it just continues to grow and grow. And everybody wants to argue with us. Everybody. John Feinstein, guy that I got to be close with. Clay Feinstein wants to argue with you. Everybody wants to argue with you, Clay. What are you doing wrong or what are you doing right?
Look, first of all, I don't mind arguing with anybody, right? Because I believe what I believe, and people are certainly welcome to believe something else. I mean, that's one of the great things about American democracy and thought process in general is that everybody can kind of argue about everything. But what I think is funny is what's happening now, by and large, if you break it down, is I'm not actually seeking out any of these people to argue with. They're seeking me out. And, you know, all day long, if I want to, I can go in and people are reacting to things that I say or things that are written on OutKick. Sometimes things just that I share from our site. And I think that speaks to the growth and influence of OutKick. Look, I think OutKick is now, and by the way, we just finished March, which was the second best month in the history of OutKick. And the number one month for time spent on the site, that is people seeing and saying, hey, you know, I just want to hang out here. And so we're delivering now for tens of millions of people every month. And I think we are not only the fastest growing, which is certainly true, I think we rapidly are becoming the most influential sports centered site anywhere on the internet in terms of the way people talk, in terms of driving conversation. And I think you're seeing that with the way that people sometimes are reacting to the opinions that are shared on a daily basis on OutKick. And, you know, I take that as a tremendous point of pride because when I started writing online in 2004, almost 20 years ago, I remember hoping to one day have 100 readers, and now we have on the site tens of millions of readers, and that doesn't even include all of the massive audiences that your show and Tommy Lahren show and Hutton and Withrow and certainly me, and then you factor in Clay and Buck, which is on 500 stations nationwide and is the biggest radio show in the country. You know, the amount of influence, and Fox News, goodness sakes, the amount of influence on a day-to-day basis that this company now has is pretty extraordinary.
You, in my opinion, I don't know if you did or you did not. I don't know. But in my opinion, you did coin the phrase, go woke, get broke. I'm seeing Budweiser challenging that with their new campaign involving Dylan Mulvaney, who is a dude dressing up like a woman. Risky here for Budweiser?
Yeah, weird, because I can't imagine that there are a ton of first of all, that the market for trans beer drinkers is massive, right? Like Budweiser is going to change their trajectory. And also the majority of beer drinkers are male, right? The vast majority of beer drinkers are male. And, you know, I was tweeting about this yesterday in response to one of the OutKick stories. And I do find this kind of interesting. How is it that women are embracing in some way men who decide to become women? But I can't even think of a famous woman who decided to become a man. And you think about that, men obviously, I think most of our audience would probably agree, men tend to look up to men who are bigger, stronger, and faster than the average man, right? That's why athletes are popular. That's why, men sort of aspire to be badasses, right? That's why Navy SEALs are aspired to. Men tend to look up. I mean, even last night with wrestling, all of the wrestling figures that are male are pretty much badasses, right? Huge, muscle bound. Same thing with superheroes, all that stuff. Men tend to look to the more masculine men as the ideal, and I think kind of feel sorry and or ignore, transgender women who are deciding to become men, but they certainly aren't central to the discussion in the male universe. Whereas women, that is men who decide to become women, are kind of massive celebrities. I mean, this Bud Light story, this chick, if you want to call her a chick, has only been a woman for a year. And it's kind of like this ridiculous thing with Leah Thomas, where you're like all of a sudden the woman of the year. And you sit back and you say, wait a minute, this person isn't actually a woman. And now they're taking away women's opportunities. Or I said, Joe Biden let this person who's only been a woman for like a couple of months interview him at the White House. Like, what kind of upside down world are we in? And why do women in particular, appears, allow this to go on? And look, it's also really strange to me, like in the limited amount of time that I've seen these videos, it's defining womanhood in a really stereotypical weird way. Like, oh, I'm such a girly girl. I love wearing dresses and I love the color pink. And I mean, it's very strange. And I don't understand, frankly, why women, I think it's probably a fear of ostracization from other women, but I don't understand why you would allow this stereotypically fake woman to somehow be a spokesperson for women in the United States when that person clearly knows nothing at all about women. And on top of that, when we've established that if you lie about your race, it's completely unacceptable, but somehow if you lie about your gender, we're all just supposed to pretend it's real. I don't understand it. If anything, you would think being able to choose your race would be far less of a statement that's being made. So all of this, when you really break it down, it's just frankly nonsensical.
I want to get to the NCAA tournament with you, but before I do, I did a little research as I'm hearing that the transgender community is, quote, under attack. So I've read up on this. A New York Times, which is the Bible, to liberals, put a big article out. And I don't know that under attack is the way it should be described. Here's a couple of things that proposed legislation. One, we don't talk about sex in our schools, 6th grade and under. That is like a teacher's dream. My daughter, I've told you before, teaches in your school district. Yep. At Edmondson, and she doesn't want to talk about sex with 4th graders that she teaches. No sex, no transgender talk ever in high schools and schools. That's not under attack to me. You gotta prove that you have a serious mental issue by 2 doctors and parental consent to have any type of transgender treatment before the age of 18. I mean, this isn't under attack. It seems to me legislation in a variety of states are simply putting guidelines to something no different than, hey, look, you can't drive a car in Indiana till 16 years, 16 years, a month and a day, buy smokes at 18, beer at 21. It seems like this is common sense stuff that is being called under attack. Where are you at with this?
Oh, that's 100% what it is. I mean, I've been on this for a while. I remember when Mario Lopez, who used to be on Saved by the Bell, I think does Extra or Access or whatever the show that he does, had an issue with a 6-year-old choosing her gender identity and had to apologize for it because the woke Hollywood community came after him. And I remember having a conversation with my wife. I mean, we've raised 3 kids, and we don't let 6-year-olds in the household pick what they eat. In fact, we don't even let, 12-year-olds pick what they eat because they would just eat candy for every meal if they could. And we also certainly wouldn't let a 14-year-old get a tattoo legally pretty much anywhere in the country. So why in the world would we let somebody take their breasts and have them chopped off? I mean, I think it's unfortunate that this has turned into, in some way, a battleground. Look, I think there are lots of teenagers that struggle, unfortunately, with their identity and what they believe and who they are. And what we should do is try to limit the long-range impact of many choices that 14 and 15 and 16-year-old kids make, because everybody out there listening to us right now knows that they believed and might well have been willing to do crazy things when you were 14 or 15 or 16, that by the time you were 26 or 36 or certainly 46, you're sitting back and saying, boy, I'm glad I didn't do that. And so that seems to me to be the very essence of parenting. And on this, there's been a lot of discussion about this drag show craziness. I just look at it entirely from the perspective of being a dad, right? If I took one of my kids to watch a stripper, the social services would show up the next day at my house, right? I mean a heterosexual stripper. If there were pictures of me and somehow a bunch of other dudes, and we all brought 6-year-olds to watch a heterosexual stripper, we would all be investigated. People would be like, oh my goodness, this is a crime. Can you believe these guys did this? That they deserve to be parents. I don't understand how when moms take their kids to watch transgender strippers at a brunch, somehow that's considered to be acceptable. And again, I'm looking at it from the perspective of a heterosexual guy. The idea of kids being around strippers in any way is crazy to me. In fact, every now and then there will be a story, some of you guys probably remember it, where a guy gets arrested because he went to a strip club and he left his kid in the car in the parking lot. Those stories come up every now and then. You're like, oh, that's the worst dad ever. Evidently, he should have just taken the kid into the strip club with him. That would have been heroic and brave of him. But even that bad dad is like, yeah, it's too much to take my kid into the strip club. But if a mom takes her 4-year-old to a brunch and there's strippers grinding on them that are transgender, somehow that's the height of tolerance and inclusivity. I just don't get it. Again, looking at it purely from the perspective of stripper behavior, whether it's a dude pretending to be a girl or an actual girl.
What did you think of the whole women's thing last night, from the referees, which were god-awful, to the taunting, which, well, we'll see. But what did you think?
Well, so I watched the Final Four game between South Carolina and Iowa. And as soon as I saw one of the referees was still wearing a mask, I was like, this is going to be a clown show. So I was not already in favor of, I don't know how many other people noticed that, but at least one of the refs on the Final Four game had a mask on, and I was like, this is going to be a clown show. But I just don't understand, one, if you're going to be aggressively policing technical fouls, you give one to Caitlin Clark for flipping the ball behind her back after a foul as we get ready, I think, for free throws. And then you allow the running around, cursing, the look at my ring, you can't see me celebration on the court without a technical foul. I watch a lot of men's basketball. Candidly, I don't watch that much women's basketball. I do think Caitlin Clark is, a Steph Curry-like talent in the women's game, and she's really fun to watch, not only for her shooting prowess, but also her passing ability. She is an electric talent relative to everybody else on the floor, to be sure. But I don't understand how men get teased all the time for hanging on the rim or doing the head top, sign. It seems like referees pretty aggressively police that for men. And then the referees police the game, I thought, pretty poorly and call a lot of fouls, and then let that occur at the end of the game. I thought it was inconsistent and just a sign that the refs did not have a strong performance.
I felt like the refs wanted to get the hell out of there. You know what I mean? Like, they were so bad. They knew they were bad. They had to know they're bad. But, that's at the end of the day, that can't be. And I had a long time head of officials send me a text after I had tweeted out, that can't be. Those 3 women cannot be the best 3 referees that women's basketball has. They just can't be. One of them could barely run up and down the court. So I guess the DEI office is happy, I would suppose, but they deserve better. These women deserve better. They deserve the best, regardless of what they look like, because that was an abomination.
Yeah, look, my argument on refereeing in general has been that, you should pay more and you'd get a higher quality of official. I really believe that. And if you went back and looked, and in particular in the NFL, I focused on this for a long time. If you're going to be paying quarterbacks $50 million a year, why would you not triple what you pay NFL officials if that would get you a higher quality of official, which I think it would, right? Because there are all sorts of people who could probably be decent officials that don't want to have the time or inclination given what are being paid to officials. I can only imagine that women's basketball officials are pretty bad because men's basketball officials are pretty bad. And so, as you go down the flow chart, typically you're going to move into tougher and less talented, I think, officials. But to your point, yeah, it should be the three best women's basketball officials in the entire country who have that game. Fortunately, if you want to say it, the game wasn't that close, so it didn't come down to officiating judgment in the grand scheme of things one way or the other. But when you've got something like the NFL where it feels like virtually every game is basically decided by a touchdown or less, whether you call holding or whether you call roughing the passer can legitimately swing the outcome of the game in a monstrous way. If we're going to have those judgment calls being made, I want the people with the best possible judgment to be making them.
NFL went totally DEI office. They got rid of a number of officials. It used to be you had to have 20 years experience before you could even be considered an NFL official. Now the number is less than 5 years, less than 10 years, and they completely got rid of experienced officials, and we're seeing the effect of it in the NFL because that's a good paying job. That's a full-time job. College basketball, women and men, isn't a full-time job, but the NFL, they went Adam Silver on us, man. They just went completely DEI on their officials.
Yeah,
Who wins tonight? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say what's unfortunate with DEI taking over sports is it's the very antithesis of sports itself, which is all about the meritocracy. I think UConn wins. I think UConn wins. They haven't really been challenged throughout the entirety of the tournament. San Diego State was very fortunate to get past FAU. Maybe they can turn this into a street fight, really kind of limit possessions, play aggressive defense. They have a lot of dudes on that San Diego State team. But I think UConn's the more talented team. They're playing better. They've won every game, I believe, throughout the whole tournament run, basically by double digits. I think they will win comfortably tonight.
Average margin of 22 is what they have done in this tournament. I think it'd be the biggest upset since Villanova over Georgetown, 1985. If they don't, what you got on shows today? What do you got today?
Well, I mean, obviously on the Clay and Buck show, we're going to be breaking down everything going on with the Trump indictment. Theoretically, he's going to be officially booked tomorrow, so we'll be all over that. Usually on Mondays, we don't have any guests on the show because there's so much to react to, but there's also talk that Biden now not going to announce until potentially the fall that he's officially running. So we'll be breaking all that down and more. And then later on OutKick the show, one of the stories that I think is most fascinating out there, and I think we're going to have some stories up about it on OutKick in the near future, is WWE and the UFC are effectively merging and creating a brand new company. What is that going to look like, and what does that mean for the future of sports? I think it's really a fascinating combo.
Hey, Clay, thanks, man. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time today. I know you're swamped.
No worries. Keep up the good work, my man. Appreciate y'all.
Gotcha. That's Clay Travis, the boss, right there. We're going to talk to our friend Chad Withrow coming up. Clay Travis, Clay and Buck, the #1 show in the country. They are the goal. We're trying to get there, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's go stock up and stock down. This has been a great show today. Fantastic guests, and it's not going to stop. Let's start with stock up, shall we? Stock up, the leader in the clubhouse, our friend Dusty May. Dusty May brought dignity back to coaching. What have we seen in coaching? Well, I'll tell you what we've seen in coaching. We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. We've seen coaches do incredibly stupid things. Dusty May, guess what? Dusty May brought dignity back to coaching. His Florida Atlantic team, he texted me after the game. I said, man, great run. He said, I think we're going to be able to keep these guys together. You know what that means? That means all the little cretins out there are coming at Johnny Davis, who didn't have a good game, coming at his players. I hope they understand that not only are they a trailblazing team in college basketball and in terms of winning, getting to the Final Four, coming from damn near nowhere, but they could be a special group for all time if they would do what, I don't know, maybe somebody like what Butler did, go back to back to Final Fours. I don't know. It's a fascinating thing. All right? Fascinating what Dusty May has been able to do. But more than that, Dusty May has been a bastion of dignity, humility, and what a coach should be. And congratulations to him for handling himself in that manner. The Trailblazers won. They were 19.5-point underdogs. Now, that is a little bit significant. Now, that's kind of fun because the NBA, my wife will tell you, the NBA is always, ladies and gentlemen, always fixed. But of course, my wife will tell you every sport is fixed. Every one. That's right, except for hers. She will say, look, it's fixed. Well, what about softball? Well, it's not fixed. Nobody cares. Okay, so every sport but hers is fixed. Well, I don't think this is fixed. I don't think every sport is fixed. It is the largest NBA upset in 30 years. They knocked off the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Trailblazers were missing 4 starters, including Damian Lillard. Had lost 11 of 12 going into that game. Second half, down 12. Timberwolves, not the greatest team, but they are involved in the playoffs. Sunday's game, the second largest upset in ESPN's stats and information database. The only other one was the Magic beating the Bulls when the spread was 21. How about that? Shaedon Sharpe scored 27. Kevin Knox 19. Next thing you know, third straight loss for the Timberwolves. Look, when we got something that is the second biggest in NBA, at least modern NBA history, I guess, you got to celebrate it. Stock up. Portland Trailblazers. Our girl, our favorite softball player, Tegan Shaw. Tegan Shaw is the best defensive third base woman in softball. We can't show the videos of Tegan Shaw, I guess, but we can tell you that if you go to Harvard Softball on Twitter or my Twitter, I'll retweet the plays that she makes. She's been doing this now for 4 years. And yes, I am biased. Yes, she's my stepdaughter. Yes, she's the lovely Lee Ross Dakich's daughter, but I don't care. I've said since she was in high school, she has the best hands defensively I've ever seen from a woman, well, I guess just a softball player. You can take the big fat guys that play slow pitch and put them in there too. Just spread it out. In all of softball, Tegan Shaw, thumbs up, stock up. She is awesome. Harvard swept Brown. Harvard is in second place. It looks like it's going to be Harvard and Princeton again for the Ivy League title and a chance to go to the NCAA tournament. 4-year starter, complete stud, and a wonderful woman. Gene Keady, ladies and gentlemen. Gene Keady made the Hall of Fame. Now, look, does his numbers deserve to go in the Hall of Fame? I don't know. He's a 5 or 6 time Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, won Big Tens, never got to the Final Four, never won a national championship. People will hold that against Coach Keady, but Coach Keady did it in a state where you were going up against the man on the left, Robert Montgomery Knight, and he's the only coach that had a winning record against Knight. Why? Because he out-Knighted Knight. He out-Knighted us. He got players from the state of Indiana and made them better and better and better. He ran better motion than we did. He was tough but lovable on his players at a time when players were quitting at Indiana. Good players, Luke Record, Jason Collier. They were leaving. This guy got him to stay and got him better. My college teammate, high school teammate, Jimmy Bullock, went to Purdue and became an all-Big Ten player after averaging less than a point as a freshman. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very, very happy for Gene Keady. Stock down, Dawn Staley. Dawn Staley, I understand you got beat. I understand, but if you can show where anybody, and I mean anybody, used the word monkeys to describe your team, then I will rescind this, I will apologize, and make it stock up. I love the fact that Dawn Staley decided that she was going to go after the media after her team lost. Fine, you want to do that. But did you make stuff up? Yes, street fighters is what they said. Yes, barroom brawl when you played. Those aren't necessarily derogatory terms. Those are, well, in the men's game, you kind of like it. I mean, what are they? The bad boys? Stop it. Anyway, next thing you know, Dawn Staley said they called their team monkeys. I would love anybody, anywhere, anytime that can show me that. I will rescind the stock down because, well, stock down is important to people. It permeates the entire country when I say something either positively or negatively. I'm being facetious. Joe Biden, just because this dude doesn't even work. We should all have a job like Joe Biden. Joe Biden has taken 40% of the time he has been in office, he has taken vacation. 40%. I want you to think about that. You tell your boss, hey, look, 40% of the time, I'm going to be out of here. I ain't working. 40%. Well, you know, it's not like he goes on vacation and doesn't work. Well, all evidence to the contrary, nothing's really getting done. So Joe Biden will be on every week for a variety of reasons. This week, it's simply because Joe Biden decided that he, ladies and gentlemen, is going to always be on vacation. And Joe Biden decided that he is going to make this transgender love, making it seem as if transgender and the community of transgenders is under attack, which it clearly isn't. Just read up on it. Clay and I talked about it. Will and I talked about it. I've talked about it. When you read up on legislation being passed about transgender and certainly transgender children, it is for their own protection. In fact, if you live in a state where this legislation making it 18, unless you have serious dysphoria, I guess, 2 doctors saying it and your parental permission before you can have treatment to change your gender. If you think that's crazy, then you're nuts. If you think saying, look, 6th graders and below, we're not talking about sex in schools. You think that's wrong, you're nuts. You think that's an attack, you're out of your mind. But this is what this guy is promoting, and he's doing it in such a ridiculously tone-deaf, insensitive way where just days after a massacre occurred at the hands of a transgender person. It's ridiculous, it's idiotic, but it is on brand for America's worst human being to ever sit in the office of president modern day. Nixon and beyond. Nixon, I'm reading a book on him. Nixon was just dumb to involve himself with those idiot plumbers. That's Nixon's problem. Women's game referees. Women's game referees, you stunk. I don't know why you were there. I don't know why you got assigned that job. But whoever assigned you that job, you stunk. Now, women are always complaining about the men's game. Men get this, men get that. Okay, fine. Well, you ought to keep your house in order, Women's Basketball Committee, because while the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office may have been happy that you had 3 African-American women, I think that woman right there is African-American. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. But certainly that's what was told to me. If you think that that clears you, you're out of your mind. People aren't idiots. They see, ladies and gentlemen, that it was as an egregiously awful called game as has ever been on the national stage. And I'm not just talking about against Iowa or against LSU. It just was. So the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office, kiss it. You got it dead wrong, and that's the only reason these 3, because I know people that are in officiating, and they saw my tweet, and they reached out and they said, not a chance. These 3 are the best. They just checked boxes. Shame on you, Women's Committee. Shame on you for not putting the best out there just simply so you can check boxes. That's horse crap, and you saw it. All right, the show Succession. I understand we're all supposed to like the show Succession. I watch it religiously. But my wife says this is all there is to it. Hey, what? Yeah, well, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, we think, okay, what? Yeah. That's the whole show. That's all the show has become until the end when something happens. I watched it last night. I called Lee. She was driving from Boston to Syracuse. I'm like, you're so right. Don't watch it. I'm going to watch it. But when she started watching it, she's like, this show's dopey. All they do is talk in partial. Yeah, well, okay, yeah. You think? Yeah, me too. Dad. Stupid. I'm going to keep watching it, though. I'm watching Perry Mason. Perry Mason's pretty good. Highly recommend. All right, Chad Withrow when we come back.
Brady recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker, wasn't
right next
it?
to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. He's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
you go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
Oh, definitely Madden. Madden, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins. And, and I remember one of the younger ones was like, man, you're on Madden. You're really good. And I was like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah.
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American. I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already.
Yeah.
Been to the Super Bowl, won the MVPs. Like now, because of man, now you're cool. I was like, oh, okay.
You had done a few things.
Yeah. Now I'm good. Okay, all right. Well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when I first started working in the morning news. Shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about season. How you feeling? You ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro. What do you think? I'm living under a rock? And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
Hey, welcome back. OutKick 360 has been rebranded. Hot Mic, my friend Chad Withrow, Jonathan Hutton. Chad, nice enough to join us now. You like Succession. I like Succession. It's getting a little tedious for me, I guess.
Well, good news for you, Dan. This is the last season, so you don't have to put up with it anymore. After I think 7 or 8 more episodes, it'll be over. I admire Succession for a couple of reasons. One, Jesse Armstrong, who's the creator, just said, yeah, we could probably end it at any time. And then he hands out the scripts to all the actors, and they get done with the season, and they're all realizing, oh, this may be the actual end of the show. And sure enough, without any big announcement or fanfare, he said, yep, I'm done telling that story. I've told all the stories I want to tell with this family right now. So 4 seasons and done. I do admire someone who's willing to go out on a high note and not stick around for 2 or 3 too many seasons just to collect a paycheck. So I appreciate that part of it. And I was listening to your previous rant about it. My favorite part of the show is the interaction with the characters, who are all very funny and interesting and obviously flawed in their own ways. Now, I will acknowledge what your wife was saying. It does feel like we're sort of in this endless circle now of Logan Roy doing something to insult the kids rallying to try to get back at Logan, and then every season kind of starts that process over again, which is seemingly where we are right now in this fourth and final season. But I'm a huge fan of the show. I was bummed when I heard it was going away, and I'm soaking in every last minute of it on Sunday nights on HBO.
Yeah, I've watched it from the get-go, and I've liked it, and I do. But it's just like, man, all right, let's go. Hey, speaking of let's go, women's game last night. A lot of people talking about it a whole weekend. What'd you think?
So Caitlin Clark got me watching women's basketball again. I'm actually going to open today's show with a rant about this, but I think the women's game has diminished over the years. And people will criticize me for saying this, and I don't mean it in any sexist way at all. I think the problem with the women's game, and what I loved about it in the 80s and 90s, was it was a different game. It was much more below the rim, fundamental ball handling, really good shooting. It was just a different type of game. And I think as the women's game emulates the men's game, the product in the women's game has gotten worse. Women are more athletic now. They can do more things on the court, but I think when it gets out of control and they're trying to play like the men, I think the women's game suffers. And I've seen that for years now as a trend. Now, watching Caitlin Clark, though, I'm thinking, this girl can do it all. I mean, she is fast, has one of the quickest first steps that I've seen. She handles the ball so well. She's got Steph Curry-like range. I loved watching her. It really drew me back to where Friday night I'm staying up late watching Iowa, South Carolina throughout because it was compelling TV. It was great basketball. So I love the story in watching her. Now with the game yesterday and what happened with Angel Reese and the taunting and everything else, I mean, look, that's going to be the storyline today. I think athletes, Dan, and you know this, athletes and coaches have long done a great job of creating a slight or creating motivation, even if a lot of it isn't there. I'd have to go and read Angel Reese's Instagram feed or Twitter feed or whatever she's seeing. I'm not seeing a lot of media members, calling her or her teammates hood or ghetto or thugs or any of that. But I am sure that some idiot with an anonymous account on a social media feed probably said something like that to her. And I'm sure that she took a screenshot of that and she saved it. And what happens is that manifests itself to become not just 4 or 5 idiots on social media, but the media or the world is saying this about us. And they're saying this about Caitlin Clark. And I'm sure Kim Mulkey did a great job of playing that clip that ESPN posted of Caitlin Clark doing the John Cena, "You can't see me" celebration for a brief moment. And that stuck with those players. So when they were dominating and won the game easily, well, guess what happened? Angel Reese, she went ham. And she started hamming it up and taunting Caitlin Clark because that's what she's probably been fed all week. So I think it should have been a technical probably. Wouldn't have mattered in the game when it happened. But I also watch it and think this is just another thing that happens when athletes and coaches, they're very competitive people. They can find anything to motivate themselves. And I think Angel Reese and the LSU team went in motivated by the fact that everyone was treating Caitlin Clark like she was the queen of college basketball. And then Kim Mulkey probably showed them the clip of her celebrating against Louisville. And then they, made that a personal affront to them as a team. And that's what we saw happen at the end of the game. And it's what we saw happen in the post-game press conference with Angel Reese.
What's going to happen tonight?
It's hard to pick against UConn right now, Dan. I mean, I came into this thing, on our betting picks, I think we took FAU on the money line. Well, that looked pretty good until that last second shot. And then I really like Miami. I actually placed a bet on them going into the tournament to win it outright and was looking at possibly making a good amount of money had they won. But that game, it's 9-2 at the first media break and really was never close. UConn just dominated. In a tournament that's had so many twists and turns and surprises, the least surprising thing in this tournament has been UConn showing up and playing well. and beating teams badly. You look at their margin of victory. You look at what they've done. Going back to, even before this, but that Arkansas game in the Sweet 16, I thought really changed my mind about this UConn team and how dominant they were. So I like UConn to continue that tonight and beat San Diego State. But, boy, that was fun on Saturday with that first game with just two veteran teams that were tough physically and mentally, grinding it out, grinding each other into the dirt in that game. And it was fun to see those teams battle. And, of course, you had the first ever Final Four ending where a team was trailing when they hit the buzzer beater to win the game. It was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. UConn has won by 22.5 or just under 22.5 every night out. San Diego State has been just tough enough to win. They have routed some people. Let me ask you this. People care, apparently, about ratings and ticket prices. The women's ticket price was more. Okay, fine. Do you?
I only care because it's sort of – here's the way I describe it to fans, right? I think, Dan, that you and I should care if we're in the media business and we're trying to formulate a show every day, because it's important to know what the majority of sports fans are watching, right? If there's something I'm really interested in and I go and watch it every weekend, but I look up and, 50,000 people are watching it on ESPN or FS1 or whatever nationally, then it's probably not worthy talking about on a national show. So I like to look at it because it's good to know what the majority of people are watching. So from a sports business perspective, it is important to me. It's obviously important to Sean McManus and CBS and Turner Sports what the NCAA tournament is doing. But I'm with you on this, and I think I know what direction you're going here. For the common fan, who cares? If you like the storylines, if you like watching FAU play, you like the way San Diego State plays defense and how all their players look like middle linebackers and can move people around. If you like watching that, watch it. And don't let the fact that it's probably going to be a bad television rating affect your enjoyment of the product. That's what I tell everyone. It's important for us. I will tweet and post about ratings. I think a lot of people are interested. But for your own enjoyment, like what you like. I'm not a big college baseball guy. I get crushed for saying I don't like watching college baseball. Even when my team is really good, I just don't care. It's not enjoyable. I don't like the ding of the bat. I like wood hitting the bat in Major League Baseball. I think it's a far better product, and I can't get into college baseball. And if I point to ratings for people on it that say, well, hey, this is a big-time trending sport, and everyone's getting behind it, I'm thinking the same women's basketball or women's softball that you crush has better ratings than the College World Series in men's. Women's college softball rates better than the College World Series. Women's college basketball rates far better. And this past weekend is a great example. It's going to rate far better than the College World Series. But I put that out there and I say, this is not me telling you not to like college baseball. Like what you like. I'm just simply giving you the counterpoint that this is some big movement that suddenly college baseball is a huge deal in a big-time national sport. It's not based on TV ratings. So while I care about it, it shouldn't affect any one person's enjoyment of their favorite sport or their favorite event simply because it doesn't rate well.
What's going on? Let's shift here. I'm all in on the Colts getting somebody other than a draft pick at quarterback, Lamar Jackson. There's been a little bit of talk about Lamar Jackson and Tennessee. What's your take here? Where's Lamar Jackson end up?
I think that of all the teams, I'm not looking at, roster space or cap space or any of that. But if you're just looking, Dan, at teams in the NFL where Lamar Jackson could thrive, because let's face it, Baltimore has built around him. Baltimore's the best landing spot because Baltimore is the team that has drafted and brought guys in to fit a Lamar Jackson offense, and it's worked out well for Lamar Jackson there. But if I'm looking at the team that is set up to win and win big with Lamar Jackson from their offense, does not get much better than putting Lamar Jackson in the backfield with Derrick Henry and the way Tennessee wants to run the football with the Titans. You don't need big-time wide receivers for the Lamar Jackson offense to work. You need solid play at tight end. You need good receivers, but not great. So I do think that the Titans would be set up from a roster offense standpoint to win with Lamar Jackson. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, the latest report is the Titans want to trade up to number 3 and draft their quarterback. I've been hearing that for a while too, to not discount. Quarterback for the Titans, Jonathan Hutton, my co-host on Hot Mic, has said that a lot, that keep in mind that quarterback could be a move for the Titans in the draft. So I would like either one of those scenarios for the Titans. I think both are an upgrade, if not immediately. It would be immediate upgrade with Lamar Jackson. It would be something that has to be done if they trade up and draft the quarterback, even if Ryan Tannehill started the season as the quarterback. The Titans know that he's not going to be the long-term option.
Opening day, is Tannehill the quarterback, Henry in the backfield? Where's Lamar Jackson and where's Aaron Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers, I'll start. That's easy. He's going to be a Jet. I think it's just a formality. Yeah. I think they're working out the tail end of that deal, whether it be the escalation pick from 4th to 2nd round or whatever it may be. I think that there's reports now that the Jets and even their GM is saying, well, it doesn't necessarily have to include a first-round pick this year. That tells me they're moving off that point, which tells me this deal is going to get done before the draft, more than likely. So Aaron Rodgers will be a Jet. If I had to guess right now, I think that the Ravens and Lamar Jackson get together and figure it out. Even though he wants to be out right now and he's public about it, I think that the Ravens will convince him that, hey, playing under this franchise tag and doing it this year and going and winning is going to help both sides. I think that he'll kind of swallow his pride a little bit and end up back in Baltimore. Tannehill will be the opening day starter for the Titans. Derrick Henry will be there. But Dan, the big caveat to that is it's not – obviously if Lamar Jackson deal is done, maybe Derrick Henry's a part of that also. But if they trade up to 3, I think there's a chance Derrick Henry's involved in that trade also. So if they traded up to 3, and let's say they draft Anthony Richardson, I'm just throwing a quarterback out there. I do not believe Anthony Richardson is their day one starter. I think Ryan Tannehill is. But if they do that, I think they're probably giving up Derrick Henry in that. So then you got a split decision. You've got Tannehill as the day one starter. You got Derrick Henry in the backfield in that scenario. I'm sorry, Richardson as the day one starter, and Derrick Henry possibly gone. So a lot of different scenarios out there, but I think the easiest one to answer right now is Aaron Rodgers will definitely end up with the Jets.
All right, last thing. 7.5 is the spread tonight. Which way you hitting?
I'm going to go San Diego State to cover that 7.5. Their defense, I think, in the way they play, is good enough to ugly this game up enough to where it's a close one. I think UConn wins it. I said earlier, they've been the dominant team in this tournament. I love the way Dan Hurley has come out and said, I had to change my mentality. I was bickering with the officials too much, and that my team saw that, and we weren't doing as well when that happened. I think that he's got the self-awareness, clearly. They've been improved. They've had a great run so far. I think UConn wins it, Dan, but give me the Aztecs plus 7.5.
I'm going the opposite way. I think they beat the crap out of them just because I just think they beat the crap out of everybody. I mean, they're just so good. All right, look forward to talking to you guys this afternoon, my friend. Thanks for the time. Always great.
Dan, always fun coming on your show, and it's always great on a Monday on Hot Mic when you get to hop on with us, especially on a national championship Monday. So looking forward to your visit later. Thanks, my man.
Thanks, brother. All right, Hot Mic, 3 o'clock Eastern time, 2 o'clock Central, right here on your OutKick network, and it's fantastic. You want information? You want fun? They got it right there. From 6th and Peabody, baby. That's right, from 6th and Peabody. I have a couple things. Bob Knight is in the hospital. My former college coach and my boss has been hospitalized. I got an email. As a former player, I get the former player newsletter, and whoever leaked that email to Rick Bozich is a jackass. I mean, why would you get an email about somebody's health and then immediately, I got to leak it to a media guy? Like, why would you do that? I've never understood that. I will die never understanding why I have got to do that. Currently, right now, listen to this. My stepdaughter texts me, Gus Johnson is giving a speech in her class on a stage at Harvard, and he's sitting there like an idiot vaping. You can't take an hour and not vape. Tegan said in a lecture, that's a big move by Gus. She didn't know who Gus is. I just said dumbass gonna dumbass. I mean, he's a known dumbass. I mean, it is what it is. But, I mean, I'm sorry, but he is. I mean, and you can't for an hour not take time from vaping to speak to the best and the brightest amongst us? That's how you're representing yourself? But hey, baby, that's, guys that can yell and scream on TV, they're important people. They are. Very important people. Back to the Bob Knight thing. Look, I hope Coach Knight's all right. I don't have a relationship with him. I haven't talked to him in 10 whatever years. He's an older gentleman. We'll see what happens. But you know what? It's the Indiana way. I mean, for some reason, whoever decide, we all get this email. We all get a newsletter, and it said prayers for Coach Knight, blah, 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 blah. And I sat there thinking to myself, which one of these idiot former players or former managers is going to leak it? Because you know it's going to happen. I mean, everybody can't wait. We got to go tell who? Rick Bozich from some nondescript failed TV station? What are we doing? It's amazing. It's just amazing. But, hey, look, we got to do it because that's what we do in this world. We want to be the one to tell some nondescript media member that, well, Coach Knight, we got a letter. It should get out. People suck, man. They do. And this isn't that big a deal. It really isn't. But when I saw it, my first thought was, that's the Indiana way, man. There's no heart. There's no, you know what I mean? There's no, hey, this is us. This is family. Not, well, let's tell Rick Bozich. Jesus. All right. Okay. All right, let's go woke-a-dope. We have massive numbers today, and I appreciate all of you. Let's go woke-a-dope. Who is woken and who is doping today? Oh, boy. All right. Yeah. Boy, is this good. Guess who the White House is praising for their bravery? 9-year-old girl died trying to pull the fire alarm to stop the shooter. Transgender people are some of the bravest Americans I know. But no one should have to be brave just to live in safety and dignity. Today on Transgender Day of Visibility, I remember my commitment to building healthy, safe, free, and future for transgender everywhere. Show it to me. Isn't it amazing that a 9-year-old girl thought enough, put herself in danger to save others? What a good person. What a great person. She should be celebrated. But what does our evil government want to celebrate? The 0.9% of people, 0.09, whatever the hell it is. The person that shot 6 people. Did you see this? There was a memorial, people holding up 7 victims. Like the transgender jackass, horrendous, sick, disgusted, twisted murderer of young children is somehow, some way a victim to these idiots, including Joe Biden and his people. That's evil. That's nothing short of evil. And it encourages folks to do that. I don't understand it. And do yourself a favor. Before you buy into the crap that is being told to us about how dangerous and how awful transgender people are being treated, read the Bible, the New York Times article on the legislation. Read it for yourself, not the slant they try to put on it. And you're going to see there's no attack here. You got to be 18 years old or be treated with a mental dysphoria by 2 doctors and parental supervision and a written parental okay note. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. That's an attack? Teachers in schools not talking about sex, 6th grade and under. That's an attack? Teachers in schools not talking about gender identity. That's an attack? This is this is what is actually happening in our schools. This is the actual legislation. You're not allowed, doctors, to just mutilate kids under 18 without parental supervision. That's an attack? What's the attack? What? Was it wrong for these cops? Why aren't the 2 cops that saved numerous lives in Nashville at the White House being celebrated But days, literally not even a week after a vicious murder, a slaughter of little girls and teachers and a janitor, that's the crap that we get. It's unbelievable to me. It is incredible to me that that's what we do. But I got to tell you, it ain't stopping. That's why shows like ours pick up steam, because most Americans think this is absolute garbage. Can you imagine being the parent of this little girl and watching that on the left side there? After your little girl was murdered by somebody in that community, but for some reason, I mean, nobody's more evil than our media. I'll tell you this anytime you want, any single time you want to discuss it. Evil is what they are. What's the next one? Oh my God, it's unbelievable. I mean, they call them the queens. Why does the country music industry have to cater to sick individuals who are on your right? Why do they have to cater to that? That wants to exist, let it exist. But why does it have to be on a national network celebrating country music? Why? Are these folks on the right that important? 99% of country music doesn't support this, I'll guarantee you, but because, well, you don't want the DEI office coming after you. Why would the DEI office care if these queens weren't celebrated? Get their ass out of there, celebrate what the hell it is you came to celebrate, and stop with these perverts in front of kids. I don't know what to tell you. That's just common sense. It is. It's just common sense. Why do we celebrate perverts? Hey, look, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to dress up like a woman and I'm going to go twerk in front of children. That's what these folks do. We're going to teach children how to tuck a buck. We're going to teach children. What kind of sane individual does that? Of course none. Sick, perverse. Sick, perverted, perverse. Period. That's it. That's the only explanation. You can come up with other explanations. You can come up with anything you want. But the fact of the matter is, that's the only answer. Even Lula's pissed off about it. Lula's going to have to be in a cage from now on. And I got to go to the, I've been really fired up today. And I haven't had enough time to see what's cracking, as we say in the cool guy industry. I haven't had time to chop it up, as noted racist Mark Jones likes to say. I haven't had time to kick it. You know, I got my strap on and one in the hole. I haven't had time to kick it with my friends on the YouTube chat. I don't know what they got going, but I guarantee you it's saucy. I saw it earlier, and there was about 500-600 people just on the chat losing their mind, and I appreciate all of you. And I do. I appreciate every one of you. Dan, my BFF is a pervert, and I like him. Well, yeah. I mean, guys are all a little bit perverted, but you don't go to those levels. Thank you, Senator BS. Dan, you coming to my golf outing? I am not, but I'm sending a check. Jeez. Uh-oh. Jay Smith says the song Man, I Feel Like a Woman by Shania Twain started all this. If you ever want to see people singing and being just insane, go to a Nashville bar on Broadway, let that Shania Twain song come up, and you're going to see so many dudes like biker dudes. Man, I feel like a woman. I know it, and I thank you for that, Sean Black. I'm giving money, but I am going to be in Cleveland at some point. I got to see when. All right, who's going to win the national championship? San Diego State got 19% of the vote. 81% of the vote goes to UConn. Look, there have been massive upsets in NCAA basketball. In my opinion, this would be the biggest, just based on how both teams have played. If you look at it, there's no question San Diego State can win the game. None. What they did to Alabama tells me San Diego State can win the game, but they ain't. Take UConn. Dylan, thank you. Ryan, thank you. Aaron, thank you. Thank you to Gary. Thank you to Davey. Thank you to Caitlin. Thank you to Haley. Thank you to everybody on this show. All of my friends that are on, ladies and gentlemen, all of them that are on my YouTube chat or OutKick's YouTube chat, we thank you. Have a great afternoon. See you.